U.S. and Native Americans have a pretty stormy past.
There's one event that's darker than all the rest. We're going to tell you about it today.
The following is a quote from Mary Brave Bird, a Lakota author and activist. She states, "The land is sacred. These words are at the core of your being. The land is our mother. The rivers our blood. Take our land away, and we die. That is, the Indian in us dies."
Native American tribes were the first to occupy the vast, resource-rich land of North America. Most sacred to Native Americans was their land. The Great Mother was the earth, and the land provided life itself. They farmed, they hunted roaming buffalo herds, and they lived in close tribes. They traded goods and passed their culture down through song and ritual.
There's a long history of relations between the Native Americans and the people of the United States. The relations between the Native Americans and the American colonists were mixed with cooperation and conflict. First, we have King Philip's War. The Massachusetts Puritans wiped out local tribes to expand colonial borders. They even killed tribal allies to make sure they had eradicated all threats. An example of cooperation is Penn's Council. William Penn and the Quakers traded and co-governed with local tribes.
As the history of relations went into the late 1800s, the U.S. government systematically took Native American lands and subjugated tribes, forcing them into camps where they were assimilated into American culture. One example was the Treaty of Fort Laramie. The proud Sioux Nation agreed to live on reservation land if they could hunt their own food. However, when white settlers invaded their hunting lands, the U.S. government did nothing to stop them, essentially taking the land away from the Indians that was promised them in the treaty. The massacre at Wounded Knee is a dark period in relations between the United States and Native Americans. As surrendering Lakota tribes laid down their weapons, a gun accidentally went off. In retaliation, the U.S. Army opened fire on surrendering Native women and children, killing 300 innocent people.
The darkest event of relations between the Native Americans and the United States government can be seen in the Trail of Tears. By signing the Indian Removal Act of 1830, President Andrew Jackson ordered millions of tribes off their land. Despite the fact that the Cherokee Nation had attempted to assimilate into American culture, they felt the U.S. government had overstepped their bounds and they refused to leave their land. Despite this, Jackson uses the army to set up a forced migration to move the Indians west to the Indian Territory. Along this trail, the Trail of Tears, the Cherokee lose a quarter of its population due to disease and starvation.
Here's a map that illustrates the journey made by members of the Seminole, Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek tribes. Over 100,000 natives were relocated forcefully by the U.S. government. Along the journey, 8,000 died, including 4,000 Cherokee alone. Together, they traveled 1,200 miles by foot from the southeast portion of the United States to the Indian Territory in what today is Oklahoma. The legacy of the Trail of Tears is a dark mark on the relationship between Native Americans and the United States that we are still dealing with today.